Today we're going to be showing you how to make a wooden D&D dice box. Now I say it's a dice box, but it also holds your miniatures, your pens, your pencils, your paints, and it also functions as a dice tray. It's really good and really portable. It's super cheap as well. So let me show you how to make one of these in an afternoon. Now when I said this project is cheap and that you could do it in an afternoon, I really meant it. This is a $1.50 little balsa wood box that I got from Walmart, and when it's stained, it looks really, really good. If you've seen my other video on the dice trays and you bought materials to do that, you already have this stain, so it didn't cost you anything extra because this stain will last a long time. It really doesn't take a huge amount to cover these things up. So step one, I take this box or any box that you find that you want and go ahead and coat it in whatever stain fits you. I like this specific color. It makes it look like a oak or a mahogany when it's just a, cheap old balsa wood box, and it works for me. You can do really any kind you want, but when staining these things, they have glue keeping them together. So you can see there's little white lines there. That's where the stain can't penetrate the glue. It can penetrate every other part of the wood except where there's glue, which is not a huge problem because we're going to go ahead and cover most of it with felt. This felt is super cheap stuff. It was 20 cents for each of these little sheets of it, but now we're going to go ahead and take and measure the box, which comes out to a little bit less than 8 inches. I make the marks here, slide a little expo marker right up the length of it, and I'm going to cut to the inside of the expo marker so that you don't actually see the black markings there. I do a test fit to make sure that it fits properly, and it gets pretty good, and I go ahead and label the top side so that I don't get them mixed up because they're not exactly perfect. Do some measurements again for the side parts, go ahead and mark that up with the marker, cut it out, and do another test fit. Now this one had a lot of excess. I flattened it out here with the ruler, and you can see it kind of bundles up there on the end. So I take just a really, really thin cut off the edge, and it gets pretty good, and I'm happy with that. So then I start measuring and doing the same thing for the top piece, which is the top of the box, and I label it B, which I know is confusing, top and bottom. This is supposed to be the bottom of the top, and the other one is the top of the bottom. It made sense to me. It doesn't have to make sense to you. I line it up here, flatten it out, and we're good to go. Now we're going to go ahead and start gluing the felt down rather than just seeing how it fits, and I'm using Gorilla Spray adhesive glue, and man, once this stuff's on, it sticks, so you got to work pretty quick because you don't want to be pulling this up and leaving felt fibers everywhere. When I put it down, I like to take something and tamp it down so that I can get the corners really flush and there's nothing hanging up on the sides of the wall. I also use something flat to scrape it down so that there's no bubbles in the felt and make sure that it all looks like a professional did it. I'm not a professional, but I can at least fake like I am. I did that with the bottom one. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the top side. Go ahead and flatten it out and make it smooth. And after it's all smoothed in and good there, we're going to go ahead and put the dividers in between. You could stop right there. That's a perfectly fine box, but I want some dividers in mine so that your stuff can't get all mixed up together. I'm using giant craft sticks as the divider. They were about $1 for this whole bag, and they're a little taller than the sides, which is perfect because when we close it, they will stand up inside there and not allow things that are in one section that we create to fall into the other. I make markings that are about 8 inches long from the top to the bottom, and then I cut them out with scissors. It's a little rough, but you can push through it, and it doesn't create any splinters, which is good. You go ahead and mark off both sides, cut them off. Now we want this to be a tight fit. It should take a little bit of effort to push it down in there. We don't want there to be any gaps, or else the glue will probably not connect to the other parts of the wood. Now we're going to go ahead and spray adhesive the stick that we've created and put it onto the felt. You can actually spray adhesive the felt, which I find out a little bit later is the much better way to do things because this way just get your hands covered in glue and sticky when you're folding this up hot dog style like they showed you in elementary. Now you can take your scissors and run it right along the edge of the wood. If you're cutting and it feels like you can't cut, you're touching wood, so just go ahead and cut the part that's really easy. I do a test fit here to make sure this is how I want it to look and make sure that it lines up in the center and first that the box closes, and it does, and that's fine. Now we're going to use some super glue, which we don't get to use often. Often we have to use hot glue, but this is something we want to stick in there permanently and be extremely rigid, and super glue will give us a nice firm grip. I put super glue about halfway down on these things because I don't want it to go over the actual wood since this is a little bit taller than the wood. And I use another tamper to kind of line up the tops and bottoms with it so that it's perfectly 90 degrees straight because it's really going to be obvious if it's not. This is another great stopping point. You could stop here and have a 2-section box, but I think I want to have some dividers so that I can have spots for dice and minis and then pens and everything else on the other side. Now these dividers are made from the same craft sticks that the middle divider was. It's just cut to length already. I didn't show that. Now I glue these up, but like I said, I glue the felt rather than the wood to save myself from having sticky fingers. This is a much better way to do it. You won't have to touch the glue of the wood, because you kind of have to touch the wood to get this thing over. I do that for both sides so that they're covered in the same purple felt material, and that will work for me as far as felt goes. I hold it with a paper towel here so I don't get any glue that I'm touching onto the felt, so that it looks perfectly smooth when I put it in. Cut it off just like I did the other one. See, it looks great here. Do the same thing for the second one. Now I can start test fitting those into where I want them. From the test fit, I decide, all right, I've got it where I want it. I make a small little mark with a pencil. That way I can find it again and it will be hidden once I glue these up. I put super glue on both sides and the bottom so that these are super rigid and help kind of keep that centerpiece in place as well. From that, I use a known right angle. I have a right angle ruler here and use it to line everything up, because if it's off by even a degree, when you have 2 of these on there, it's going to start becoming more and more noticeable, right? So it's really important that you get the angles right. You have a perfectly good box. You could stop right here, and I've said that a few times, but this really is about as functional as it's gonna get, but I'm gonna take it one more step further. We're gonna wood burn this just like we did with our dice trays, and to do that, we're gonna take some graphite paper, which is basically tracer paper, and tape it down onto the box. The design I'm choosing is this kind of Celtic knot pattern, which I lay on top of the graphite paper and I just trace around it with a pencil. If it's hard to see, I'm pushing extremely hard here so that the graphite on the other side of the paper transfers onto the wood, because it's already hard to see being that it's pencil on wood. We want to see as much as we can. I'll go ahead and take the paper off, and now you can see those markings are on there for me to trace and follow. It's hard to see on the camera, but they're good enough for me to work with outside of the camera. I covered using this tool a little bit more in my dice tray video, but essentially it's just a pencil, except instead of lead or graphite, it's really hot iron, enough to burn the wood on contact. It's a slow process, especially with a super cheap iron like I have. I think mine was 10 bucks way back when. If you have a really nice one, this can be done super quickly, as fast as you would basically write with a pencil. But I don't have one, and I was really a little worried about the wood being so thin and cheap that it was going to burn right through. But it didn't happen, so we're good. I didn't have to worry about it. You can see the process up close and quick. It happens much quicker than what I do, and bam. That looks so good on the wood. It's so much better than just putting a decal or something else on there. Now I'm completed with this project. I'm extremely happy with how this came out. This is actually going to be a gift for a good friend of mine who's ending his time in our campaign in the next few weeks, so I wanted to give him something with his character's name engraved on the back of it. But now, let's take a look at the inside and what this will actually hold inside the box. Now it holds about, I would say, 5 dice sets in one of the compartments. You could fill all of it and have, 15 or more dice sets. It also holds a couple of miniatures, regular plastic minis standing straight up, and any that are too big, you can just lay down in the back, like these ones that I have over here. It also holds plenty of pens and dry erase markers, and another good thing is that it holds your paints in case you want to take your figures over somewhere and do some painting with a buddy of yours. I do that every now and again. It holds that just fine for you as well. And you can see here, we're going to close it and do a little shake test with the box. The shake test is just to show that the taller dividers mattered, so that when we flip this upside down, shake it, who knows, when you open it back up, your minis are still in the mini spot and your dice is still in the dice spot. Now because it's felt, they're all going to be protected, and you can roll your dice on here or on the top, because those are both makeshift dice trays, and that's what we wanted. All in all, I am extremely happy with how this turned out. I'm sad to see the box go, but it only took about 2 hours besides waiting for the stain to dry, so I can just make me another one afternoon. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch this. Please subscribe if you want to see more, or consider sharing this with somebody who you might want to make a box with sometime. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you next week on the next video.